How about now? So one of my Dharma sisters and dear bestie yoginis asked me for something for sciatica. Sciatica is a huge, complex thing, many factors. So it depends on how severe it is, whether or not what I'm going to offer on this two-dimensional flat screen format will be targeted directly for what you need if you deal with sciatica. So just sort of some blanket general stuff. I'll add some commentary around specifics. Probably use for this practice, which going from some therapeutics for sciatica, building into a stronger practice to open side body, a blanket, a couple of blocks, a strap, and then possibly yoga chair, which any kitchen chair, living room, dining room chair will do. Take care of yourself. And this is weird, but this is the times we live in. Call me old school, but I like yoga in person. Here we go. So start supine and with feet wide. Knock your knees together. You can place hands on belly or one hand on belly, one hand on heart, and simply feel into the reality of your body today. Stress and anxiety is not only bad for the nervous system, but it's bad for our physical bodies too. Our tissues hold stress and strain. So allow what's touching the floor to fall into the floor. Maybe let your head roll a little bit right to left. Feel into the three-dimensionality of your breath, wide, deep, and from top to bottom. And if it feels welcoming or interesting, you can pause, holding your breath when you're full. Pause at the top. That tends to be easier for people. And if you want to work on some good elasticity in your lungs, the alveoli, the muscles around breath, exhale through pursed lips, and then maybe pause at the bottom. So one example might look like this. Then go for full body stretch. You can hook your thumbs. Can you see my feet? So point and flex the feet. And then let the right side reach a little longer. And you can make some ankle circles down there. For sure, supinate the foot, which means that outer foot gets longer. Reach through the outer foot and you curl the toes in towards the midline. And then go to the left side. Right to left. And check yourself if you are back bendy like me to keep that quieted down. At least every once in a while. You can pick it up if it feels good, but then for sure do the opposite. And I'm 1 foot at a time on the short side. So the shortening side, I'm bending that knee in, righting the inner foot, and lifting that hip up a little bit. Use an exhale. to curl everything in. See if you can do it without hugging and with the strength of your abdomen. And then this move where you dorsiflex the feet and flex the toes. So it's not like that, it's not like that, it's like that. And when you land, feet wide, knees together. Pardon my costume malfunction. So feet wide, knees together. And right here it's a small movement. Pressing with the outer foot, like you're trying to shove the mat over to the side. It'll offset the knees. And do that right and left a few times. So the thing with sciatica, the musculature deep in the glutes can get really compact, really tight, really gummy, and it puts compression on the sciatic nerve. So we're gonna look to lengthen from like sit bone to outer hip, trying to get space in there, which means a lot of internal rotation. So generally speaking, sciatica, it's counterindicated for extreme sciatica to do standing forward bends. Mostly it's supine forward bends. And external rotation can be counterindicated. So things like triangle pose, warrior two, side angle, Trikonasana, Virabhadrasana 2, and Parshvakonasana would be counterindicated for the front leg because that's a turned out leg. So we're trying to turn in. And that's what this is doing. So make this a little bit deeper, bigger movement. Start to tip the knee more towards the toes of the opposite foot. And you're still trying to lengthen that outer foot a little bit. Pull a little more length in the outer leg, outer hip. Sync up your breath however it feels good. And then from here, take a pause and check back in with your breathing. If you left your breathing behind to concentrate on the movement, then notice. First step is to notice, and then to try to consciously merge the two, right? Breath is non-negotiable. We're going to meet on our side. Pick a side, I don't care which side. And have your knees straight out from your hips. Just have to keep checking for costume malfunctions. I do, you don't. And with your knees straight out from your hips, your legs are stacked, and check out how active my feet are. So the inner edges of the feet are going to act like a hinge. Actually, that's not true. The thighs are going to act like a hinge because we're going to internally rotate. So again, we're looking to get spread in between sit bone and outer hip. So internal rotation. Now, make sure you don't do it so much that you shorten your waist. I mean, you could do that, but we're after the hip socket. So you could do about 5 or 10 of these. And then there's a few adjustments we're going to make. We're going to adjust how much the knees are flexed and how much the hips are flexed. So let's first unbend the hips a little bit. Knees can stay at their 90 degrees, right? And so here we go. So you're going to get in different muscles, different internally rotating muscles, different inner thigh muscles. And straightening the hips a little bit more, you might actually end up with no hip flexion at all. Just like straight down from the head to your knees. Internally rotating, internally rotating. And then the next steps would be to unbend the knees a little. So that's gonna, again, work different muscles. So if you're new to me, if you're new to how I work, I come from the paradigm that no movement is inherently good or bad. In general, it might be good or bad for you or for your needs, right? A little more straightening of the knees. And it's not just simplified biomechanics. Like, that can be a helpful step to start to parse things out, but it's what do you feel? So your practice should be transparent, no pain. And then eventually legs are totally straight, and then the rotation happens, you know, trying to turn top leg, big toe towards bottom leg, big toe. And then from here, as if your toes were leading the way. So check out my left foot. I'm going to supinate and then start to try to bring the foot, the toes towards my nose. I'm supporting myself with my top arm. So it's like pigeon leg coming from inner thigh strength. It's not easy. And pushing with that bottom leg is a contrast. And then go ahead and undo it. Internally rotate the leg and take the back of the heel back and up. And then the first move again, where toes are trying to get to your nose, all leg strength. Your movement may not be this big. It might be much bigger. Wowzer. And then this time, we're gonna stay. We're gonna bring it as close as we can to our nose. Step it on the floor. Pause. To quote Eric Schiffman, pause. I'm rocking forward and backward, which is changing the angle of the thigh bone in relationship to my pelvis. Your head may go on and off your arm. Then you can add with this down leg a little internal rotation as well. Then bending bottom leg, catching top leg, and then creepy crawl. Both my feet are creepy crawling. The whole thing closer to my face. And then try to lengthen this side. You could use your hand. It's like try to take top leg sit bone that way, away from your head. So now external rotation with flexion is going to add some lengthening of those deep booty muscles we were just working. I'm going to take this whole figure 4 shape onto the back. Pull it in. And I vote you interlace on your hamstring. Here's that foot shape again that I talked about earlier. You can also supinate, which will help to get the leg to rotate. And then this leg, whether you catch it with your hands or a belt, either way. This is optional. You could stay with a bent top leg. And then I recommend from here taking a little wobble. Try to keep your torso pretty stable and wobble right to left. And when you wobble towards the hip, the pressure of the flesh on the floor will give you something. Let the whole thing drop. Scissor the inner thighs, so now it's just knees crossed. And take this whole thing and tip it towards the top side leg. Top side leg. Do I have a costume malfunction? The down leg foot mostly stays in place, but I like to get on the inner edge of it, and you can see that I'm pumping the heel a little bit. That works for my body, and it gives me a little extra massage in that outer hip. And then maybe 2 or 3 or 5 or 100 more of these, depending on how it feels for you. So this is one of the deals where you might actually watch later and pause it when you want. And then full body stretch. Baby ball on your back. We'll do this whole thing on the other side. So you can just roll over. I'm going to spin around so you can see. So, knees straight out. Knees at a 90-degree angle, internally rotate. In the internal rotation, I like to pronate the foot, so that's the inner foot going longer than the outer foot. It's like that's a supinated foot, that's a pronated foot. Doing about 5 or 10 or so before we change the angle of the hips. We're not going to change the angle of the knees. And I can see like people commenting, and my phone is too far away, so if you're asking me questions, I can't read them. But I'll go back later and comment. So a little less bend in the hips, same bend in the knees, internally rotating. And the idea is to get a little bit more distance between sit bone and outer hip, which is the exact opposite thing we do in standing side bending poses like triangle, warrior two, side angle, half moon. A little bit more unbending of the hips. So maybe the knees are straight down like one line from head to knees. The feet are straight behind the knees. Knees are still at about a 90-degree bend. And of course, modify for yourself. Nothing should hurt in your practice. Shouldn't ever have any popping or pinching. Richard Freeman says one's practice should be transparent. That means none of those yellow lights of popping, pinching, hurting. Maybe a little straightening of the knees. It's going to change where we're working, what muscles we're using. And please send your breath low and wide. And a little less bend in the knees. You could add to this, depending on what you feel, like a little bit of separating of your sit bones, like stick your booty back. That'll add a little something depending on what you're feeling. And then finally, legs are straight, but you keep the internal rotation. And I'm going to support my body with my top arm. And to give a little counter pose now to this internal rotation, we're going to try to reach through the toe tips. So toe tips activated, supinated foot. like you're trying to scoop up the floor with your outer foot and bring it towards your face. Not easy. Knee to the ceiling if you can. And then internally rotate and extend, straighten the leg, send the hip back, and try to take the outer heel to the ceiling. We're like footprint on the ceiling. It's internally rotated. It's turned in. And then back to the turned out with flexion of the knee and the hip. Like you want to touch all 5 of those toes to your nose. And then start with a pronated foot. Internally rotate, extend, send it back, woo, and up. Oh my, one more. As TS would say, sound effects are optional. And then land the foot, pause, oh my. And then this rolling forward and backward. This is changing the relationship between the thigh and the pelvis. Wowzers. Go ahead. Are we back? Bottom leg, knee up to meet the foot, and see this walking of both feet up. Then take this hip that away, that away. You could do it manually or with your own muscles of the hip and outer waist. We're going to roll this onto our back, figure 4, bring it with you. Stage 1. Stage 2. This is my tighter hip, so I can't on this side casually catch my foot, so I'm not going to force it. But with the legs straight, it makes for a different kind of feel in the leg that we're affecting, in the down leg. And then the amount of wobbling you want to do right to left. And when you go towards the folded leg, it offers something to that hip that's different if you just stay put. Including the foot of the externally rotated leg, supinate, ankle circles. It affects the hip. And then we'll land with feet wide, knees together. Pause, breathe, feel. Supta Sukhasana or Supine Sukhasana. So crossing shins and catching outer feet. If you can't catch here, you can make a little belt loop and a little belt loop and work here, right? It's important that you try to keep the feet active. I've got my outer feet sort of pushing into the belt, taking my knees towards my feet. And then sweetly, gently inviting with my hands, my feet to come to my knees while my knees are pushing towards my feet. Any wobbling here is welcome. it's an asymmetrical pose, so we got to do both sides. So switch when you're ready. So you guys stay with this. I'm just going to check some of the messages. People are watching. I don't know what some of the things said. Did anybody send? Saving this for later. Hi, sister. Hi, Tamo. Holly Elliott. Blast from the past. Okay, so y'all can hear me, right? It's going well. Okay, thanks. I'm going back at it now. This next one, you might need your belt. We're going to toggle between. So using a belt or catching with your hand depends on what you got, right? So Supta Padangusthasana 1 or supine hand to foot 1. Easier with the down leg bent. Easier with the down leg bent. You can slowly take that leg long. And it can go all the way to straight or keep it bent. I like to toggle. So when I get this one to straighten, I pull this one into happy baby. And then I might alternate a little, straighten, bend. So I'm working the distance between the two thigh bones. It's not easy, actually. And I like to actually do opposite leg to hand, so you could catch here, right? And then use this hand to help get some length, moving that flesh that way. Whether you need the belt or not. Eventually, both legs straight. Let this bend if you need to. Keep it bent if you need to. And then to get more at the outer body, to help that sciatic issue, keeping the back pocket on the floor, taking that outer hip towards the down leg foot, and moving this leg a little bit across the body. It's going to offer you something all the way up the outer leg, likely. And you could still take the little bend. And so in this way, you're sort of flirting with the pigeon pose. Sort of flirting with the pigeon pose here. So if you're using a belt, it could look like this. It could look like this, right? Depends on where you're at. And then I'm curious about our parts, legs, parts, joints, to be able to sustain a shape without cranking on them. So what's it like if you let go of the leg and it works on its own, and then maybe add a little core work. Couple of breaths, maybe you go out to the side and then to the other side. You could have the knee bent, baby ball on your back. Feet wide, knees together, pause. Other side. belt or hand. Slowly inviting the down leg to go longer and toggling the upper leg between happy baby and a straight leg. Include your feet. Don't let your feet just be these limp places on the end of your leg. Also, don't be hyper rigid in the feet, right? So being able to point the toes and flex the foot and not just get trapped in what I call the big toe twang. Don't get trapped in the big toe twang. It's a trap for sure. Catching the outer hip with your hand. And perhaps you're using a belt. Totally legit, use a belt. But now it's opposite hand, opposite foot. And then invite the leg a little bit across the midline. A little bit across the midline. And as best as you can, keeping that outer hip on the floor. So it's adducting the leg. It's adduction of the leg. And then if you include the bending and straightening, the bending becomes like a pigeon flirt, right? So we did this laying on our side, if you remember, if you were here. Bottom leg. It's organizing to allow you more access here. Okay? Baby ball. Half boat. If you need to catch with your hands and pull yourself up, do that. And then grab your block. Put your block between your knees and your feet on the floor. In this next little exercise, I'm borrowing from Bartenia Fundamentals, in which I am not certified. But I learned it from one of my amazing teachers, Amy Matthews. When I say my teacher, I'm talking about like one of 6 people. So, block between your knees. Feet, maybe not quite under your knees, but a little bit forward. And then float your hips off the ground. Okay, squeeze the block. Float your hips off the ground so you can still feel the ground behind you. But you can slide your hips back and forth. And as you slide your hips back and forth, a couple of rules. Keep the same distance from the ground, both of your butt cheeks, same distance from the ground. So you're keeping it very level, like a typewriter carriage. Very level, like a typewriter carriage. If you're to swing like a hammock or a swing, it's missing the mark, okay? So if you can keep your hips level, first of all, it's easier the lower your hips are to the ground. And then the 3 pelvic bones are having to renegotiate their relationship all the time. If we just swing like a pendulum, then the pelvic bones don't have to do anything. They just go in one big clump. So it's almost like here I'm sticking my right butt cheek out, all right? So that's one rule. Pelvis stays level to the ground. That's actually hard, and in this 2-dimensional medium, even harder. The second rule is knees stay in the middle. Don't let your knees swing. That's why we're squeezing the block, all right? So what if we all meet on the right side? If we all meet with the hips over to the right, The right knee is hugging the midline. And you should feel like, telling you what you should feel, you want to feel like the inner leg, inner heel of the right leg is really holding the whole thing. So you could pick that other foot, left foot up off the ground an inch or two. So now we're on the inner leg, deep inner glutes. Trying to keep the buns from clenching in the interest of softening the muscles around the sciatic nerve. So then over to the left butt cheek back and out and low. Really standing on that inner left heel, inner left thigh, and then can you float that right foot up just an inch? Knees stay in the center, all right? So you guys stay with this. I'm going to check some of these things. You guys can hear me, yes? You can hear me? Oh my, okay, so back at it. You guys are freaking me out. This whole thing is freaking me out. So a couple more rounds. Squeeze the block, hips low, slide, pick that foot up. So clearly my right side is weaker than my left. This is about the inner leg, inner leg, inner leg. All right, maybe one more. If you get cramping on the inner leg, inner foot, that's all right. It's a good sign that you're in uncharted territories, even though cramps sort of suck. Okay, happy baby, full on. And then wobble, wobble. Nice deep breaths. And then from here, you take both legs up or hold your feet. And we're going to add something very subtle here, a very subtle layer of one leg reaching a little bit up and the other leg pulling back. So notice how I'm offsetting my feet. And if you have some sciatica or some SI blues, you might just do one leg. Like that one leg might be the really important one to do. Maybe don't do both legs. I don't have sciatica. I don't have SI drama. I have other kinds of body drama, but not those. And so it makes sense for me and it feels good for me to go right to left, right to left. You don't have to use the belt. And then from here, come on to like a supine Baddha Konasana, different. So not this Supta Baddha Konasana, but this Supta Baddha Konasana. And try to send your pubic bones that way. One more thing on the floor before we come up. So baby ball. Notice the feet. To half boat, use your hands if you need them. Or struggle your way up. And then one more time. Actually, you have two choices. You can use a blanket. You want to roll it up from this shape. Fold some of it over. And then roll it up. This will be a little bit softer edge here. if you want to use a block, that's a little bit more hardcore. Because what we're going for is outer hip, so outside of the pelvis. And you can either stack your legs or you could bend one. This will be a little more capable of directing the pressure and a little less weight. This is a little more weight. And I guess I can still direct the pressure pretty good, but I'm rolling forward and back. The other option would be a block. It's considerably more intense. So you could put a blanket over the block. I tend to be more of an intensophile myself. I'm working on it. I'm really clear that that's part of my karma. So my work has been to soften things over the years. But this feels okay to me to work with this hard edge. If you wanted it to be a little softer, lay a blanket over it, or softer yet, use the blanket roll. And so working the block or the stimulus in this area, like from the top of where the IT band meets the glute, all the way up to the upper rim of the pelvis. More weight is if you straighten your arm. So you could stay down here, much more digestible. I'm still on the first side. Another way to feel into this, so rocking the whole body forward and backward. You could keep the flesh on the block stable and then move your skeleton inside. So like I'm dragging the skin, the muscle a little bit forward as I swing my bottom hip back. So you can roll everything or move your skeleton inside your flesh. Yum. So now I'm more at the bottom of my pelvis, and I can actually get on some of those attachments of the quadricep muscles where they hook up to the hip point, or the ASIS, the anterior superior iliac spine. So I'm actually going to come a little bit more forward on the stimulus. Okay, other side. You could just flip over, but I'm going to swing around so you can see better. Starting at the bottom part of the pelvis, starting more mellow. So down where the leg meets the pelvis on my elbow. Again, you can use blanket roll instead. It's a little less intense. Or lay the blanket over the block. So this is the second side. And I like a little bit more intensity, so I'm going to come up taller, and then I'm also going to slide my body down the block so I get higher up on my pelvis. And what you do with the feet matters always, but the feet and the pelvic halves, you know, they grew together when we were forming in utero. So they have a very direct relationship, outer foot to outer pelvis. inner foot to inner pelvis, front of the foot or like the toe tips, top of foot with the front of the pelvis, back of the heel with the back of the pelvis, heel bone with sit bone. And so what we do with our feet affects what we feel in our pelvis, and vice versa. Slowly moving my body down the block, bringing the block higher up on the pelvis. This is my dramatic outer hip side, so I need to go a little slower, spend a little more time. Yum. Ooh. So you might find some like buried treasure and spend some time excavating that treasure. And then as you're ready, hands and knees. Cats and cows. Classically, it's cued the exhale on the cat and the inhale in the cow. I said cats and dogs, I meant to say cats and cows. But it's legit to switch it up. Make this an exhale. And make this an inhale, because most of your lungs are in your back. Your lungs go all the way down to here, and there's so much more in the back body. And so I started this with the idea of some somatic healing love, not somatic, sciatic healing love in mind. And that's probably over now, that portion of the practice specific for releasing tissues around the sciatic nerve. Now we're going to get into a more active practice, working with side body. So take care of yourselves, and you can always go back and redo the first part. And then give me feedback. Let me know if you can hear me okay. I'll check after the fact. I have no idea right now if you can hear me. And also if you want requests for things. Okay? So, downward dog. And if I back up for a second, I think a good way to go into down dog is if you get the cat pose and you feel how wide your shoulder blades are apart, and you really round the back, and as you push the floor away, the shoulder blades elevate and they upwardly rotate. You can keep that and then use your legs to pull the weight back. So the shoulder blades stay wide, upper back stays wide. And I'm a big fan of alternating knee bends. And the bent knee hip, you can let that sort of sink down and also float up. So look for any amount of movement by way of your bent leg to affect the hip, the pelvis thigh bone relationship of your straight leg. So what's happening here is my right leg, your straight leg. You're adducting and abducting that leg by way of moving the pelvis around. Very cool, no? Then both legs equally straight. And a little more core work. This is my new favorite core work. If you bring your knees to almost touch, and you've got your elbows bent, and you're going to keep your knees almost touching. And then you do a little bear crawl. I would start with one limb moving at a time. Right? Or you can move two limbs at a time. It'd be opposite hand, opposite knee. You're just sort of skimming along the surface. It's not easy. Thigh work, belly work. Land your knees. Bring your legs right together. Inner heels, inner edges of feet, big toes. Pause. If when you bring weight back onto your feet, the heels blow apart, then actively try to hug them together. Yikes, you were definitely a singer. What does that mean? Are people saying mean things to me? Love you. You can hear me. Okay. Okay, keep doing your bear crawl. I love you guys too. Turn this into a squat. So if you can't squat fully, you know, you've got this whole range from child's pose into the full squat to work on it. So you start with toes, then eventually ankles, right? This is assuming your hips can fold. And you can work here for as long as you want and sort of flirt with the idea. You see me? Of bringing your heels down, and you've got this little trick here. You can grab the sides of your mat and take your mat that way to lower your hips down. Here, high kneeling, and I'm going to do my right leg out to the side. You can do elbow to knee or hand to ankle. And I'm going to take the weight, I'm going to push with this foot to send the weight that way. Start with the top arm behind you, left arm. Sweep it back at shoulder extension. And can you have the palm facing down and reach more through your thumb side? Thumb side. And then like your arm is a helicopter blade, slicing through the space. And then reach, really reach. And feel the reach from your knee all the way up to that arm. You could even look at it maybe, depending on how your neck feels, you could look down. I like to do this lat pull down with the arm and then repeat. Shoulder extension, thumb leads. Helicopter blade arm. Reach, 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 look and reach. And then grab what you're reaching for and pull it down. Side 2, after a pause. Either elbow to knee or hand to ankle. Shoulder extension, let the thumb side reach the longest. So I'll tip my hand so you can see. It's like I'm trying to keep that thumb side longer. That's going to pull a little more on the collarbone. Thumb to collarbone relationship. Or you could say thumb to top of shoulder blade. Sending the weight from that foot to this shin. And then slice. Pinky side. I didn't say this on the first side. Pinky side of the hand reaches more now. And you're going to look to that hand. Go ahead and grab what you've reached for and then pull it down. Unfurl the arm, thumb leads the way. Clear the table in front of you. And then reach through pinky, pinky, pinky. Look for what you're reaching or look down if you need to. And then grab what you're reaching for and pull yourself back and up. Back to down dog. And then take your time to walk your feet to your hands. There might be some point where your knees have to bend a lot more. You catch your blocks and put your hands on your blocks. And then catch that blanket roll that we made a bit ago. This can also be a good move for sciatic, depending on how severe it is, because standing forward bends are contraindicated. You might need your blocks. So toes way up on the blanket, heels on the floor. Depending on your hamstrings, you may need a lot of support here. I personally don't. So here I go. Lengthening the toe tips. So this can be so intense that the feet either grip or wilt. And you keep reaching through the toe tips, which is going to bring more length through the whole thing. Really strong thighs. Turn on those thighs. Okay, I'm rolling up. So it's easy to get almost all the way up, almost all the way. And to get this last few degrees, you have to really drop your sit bones. This is the part that I think might be good for sciatica, because I can't just clench my butt to get there. Just can't do it. If I did, I'll probably fall backwards. So I have to keep moving my sit bones down and lifting my kneecaps up and trying to find that plumb line from top of head to the arches of the feet. So I'm still getting there. I'm feeling some resistance in the back of my right leg. Exhales are going to help. Getting there, getting there, getting there. Oh, yes. And so this is a really good teacher to not clench your bum. And you can step off the blanket roll, set it aside. Come to standing, take legs wide apart. Right leg externally rotates, left leg turns in. Soften both your knees. Keep your back knee bent for a long time. And that same outer hip thing we were doing before, take that outer hip of the front leg back as you come down either to a shin or to an ankle or to a block. And then straightening your front leg to keep the back knee bent, bent, bent. When I straighten the back leg, I can either do it by way of moving my torso through space, but don't do that. Can you find the length here as you straighten the leg? Length here as you straighten the leg. And then there's a way you can work either trying to rip the mat apart or like hugging the mat together with your feet. Really, you need both. You need to be able to do both, hug together and reach out. But you probably need, we all need to do one more than the other. And if it's all going well, maybe this arm goes up, but go for really reach, like feed whatever you're touching with the bottom hand into the floor, and then really try to reach for something. And if your neck is happy and integrated, you can look for what you're reaching for. I recommend it, but it might be better for your neck to look down. And then when you're ready, you can soften your two knees and come on up and switch it over. So, I don't do this stuff very often, ever. I don't ever do this for all the reasons I think are good. So if there's weirdness going on out there, or if I've got costume malfunction, or if my pants are see-through, I sort of don't care. So don't be hating. And I'm going to learn from this experience. It'd be ideal, God willing, right? Both knees are bent. Both knees are bent. As you straighten the front leg, outer hip of the front leg goes that way, back of the hip. Swing, so it's external rotation. Trying to feed the mat with the ball mounds, the toes forward. Back leg is still bent. And then when you choose to straighten it, don't just move the torso through space, but look for your length here. You're turning away from the leg. You're turning the outer buttock flesh of the front leg down as you roll back towards it. And then maybe the arms go. Either look up if your neck lets you, or look down. Swallowing is a good litmus test. Breath should always be in the foreground. And then from here, I vote we stay a little longer. And when you're ready to come up, soften your knees, like sort of pull the floor up with you as you come. And then you could either pause here and rest, or you could step to the top of your mat. You decide if you're going to flow or stay put. With your palate cleansing moves here, you could make it quite a bit easier. Maybe not an up dog, or build to your up dog. Whatever works. Okay, grab your blocks. One foot on the block, that's going to be the front leg. Go for a nice wide stance. Second block on the ready. So this just puts a little more weight on the back leg, which can make it easier. And it's going to give, you'll see, us a little more length in the outer body, depending on how far down you can go. So same deal with the front leg hip. The sit bone's swinging under, that outer hip sliding that way. And you could maybe just use the block that your foot's on. You might need a lot more block, right? If you can get hand down to foot. See, I've got quite a bit of sensation that feels helpful to me going through here. Maybe go lower, right? So the lower you go, the more you have to commit to, and you may not be ready. So depending on your skill level, your capacity to include sensation and or your needs, right? And then to come out, you just come out the same way you went in. So this is the tricky part, to get that foot off the block without toppling. Side number 2. How much you bend this front leg knee is negotiable. It's just going to decide how far apart your feet are, right? Ideally, we'd like to keep the knee right over the heel so the shin is vertical. I know most of y'all know that. I just don't know who's out there. Side bending, you could use the same level, higher level, lower level. Rolling back towards the space behind you. Yum. 1 or 2 or 3 more breaths here. Careful with your exit strategy. Utkatasana is next. And your Utka, at least 51%, a little more than half of your weight in your heels. So notice how that puts you in your belly, sitting down, knees hugging, inner feet hugging. Even if your knees and feet aren't together, there's a magnetism there. Uttanasana. Interlace hands if you can. If not, just put hands on hips and hug elbows back. And then you can come to stand and chill or take another flow. You can be as strong or as soft as you want. Right? So now, either a block under your pelvis, or you can sit on your blanket, or you can sit on the floor. I'm going to do the other leg first, sorry. And then turning, is this what I wanted to do? I think so. Turning towards the knee, bent leg knee, and then starting to bend, side bend towards the straight leg side. Keep an eye on that foot. If it starts to turn out, don't let it. We're almost done here. I have no idea how much time has passed. But however much support you need with the down arm, and you turn away from it, you could put back of hand on floor, and you could support head with the upper hand, or simply look down. Whatever works. Many breaths. I like to turn towards the sky. I like to use, my fingers are all the way around to this other ear, right? And I'm reaching through the elbow. Pinky side of the hand reaches furthest when the arm is overhead, generally speaking. And I'm going to wrap the arm around, open up the front of the shoulder for a few breaths as well. And then we'll switch sides. So to switch, you might do dandasana in the middle. Or you could forward bend, or you could do tabletop, this business, right? Whatever you need to cleanse the palate. Whatever you need to motor out or assimilate what you just stirred up. It's different for everyone. Other side. Turn towards the bent knee. Many of you will have support under your bum. It helps. So when we put support under the bum, it'll cantilever weight towards the direction you want to go. Towards the direction you want the weight to go. In this case, towards that leg. Make sure the leg stays neutral. So not so much turning out. But that's a variable. Like if your leg is really turned in, then you will add turn out. If the leg's really turned out, then you add turn in. Like what's it like to have a neutral leg, toes pointing up? And if that's your default, if that's easy, then you might add some turning out or turning in. It's so different for everyone. So knowing your options is always, I don't use that word very often, is always a way to widen your perspective, to help you get a different view. How far you go down is up to your side body. And even if you go way up at the ribs, fine. If you're stuck there, then you'd better find some alternatives to get more of the lengthening in different areas. If it's always only in the same place and the same way, ultimately that might not be sustainable. And you're leaving out all sorts of important parts. A couple more breaths. Sound effects are optional. Down dog. Or cat-cow, or child's, or just sit there kneeling, or stand. Breathe. Digest. Maybe motor out. Grab your chair. Could be a kitchen chair, could be a dining room chair. And depending on how long your legs are, or how tight you think your hips are, you might add something down here. Pigeon leg. And you can have your foot closer to the edge of the chair and your knee more forward. Or you could simply put your knee on it, shin on it. Depends on your hip, right? Depends on your knee. I like to get this hand underneath. That's me, your choice. So working the pigeon with a lot of height under the pelvis. So with the back leg on the floor and this business up here, it makes life easier on the hip. So stay up here for as long as you can stand it. I'm really working the outer edge of the foot into the chair, supinating that foot, so rolling top of the foot towards the chair. There's all sorts of messages coming through. I can't read them. I hope they're nice. I hope it's going well. And then you bring the down leg knee down. I don't need this blanket, so I'm going to lose it. And you work here. You could even take it back a little bit, depending on what you're feeling. You could go down, or you could stay up. You decide. You decide. You guys stay here. I'm going to check the phone. Oh, goodness. All right. Seems to be going well. Hi, Shazia, Gogia. Long time no connect, girl. I think about our days at Kripalu. Hi, Susan Mack. Hi everyone. Okay, back at it. Y'all are here. Y'all are here. Or something like it, yeah? If this is too much, even with the blanket underneath, then you could do, you know, something like this. Just getting that external rotation with flexion at the hip, right? I'm including the extension of the down leg. And something else I like to do is to the SI joint of the pigeon leg, from the low belly, move that SI joint back. So it's actually going to bring a little bit more of this sort of a gathering in the low belly, helping that sit bone to come under. And then your exit strategy is to simply come out. And you can do chair dog of the downward facing variety. You can do chair dog of the upward facing variety. Or you could simply stand and pause, chill. Other side. So get your foot up and decide what degree of turnout you can manage. It might be here. Arms are doing a lot of work. Might be here. I like to have the foot on the chair, then I can incorporate the work of the foot through the knee to the hip. So it's not just knee to hip. Foot can help stabilize the knee. What's commonly taught is a pronation of that foot to support the outer knee, and if there's knee drama, probably your best choice. If you don't have knee drama, I don't have knee drama, I have other kinds of drama, you supinate that foot, and that's going to affect the turnout. If it hurts your knee, don't do it. If it hurts anything, do not do it. If you put something below that down leg knee, it probably is still there. You don't have to move it unless you want to. And then here, you know, how much distance you want depends on your hip. You can stay up. You can fold. You can be here. Be kind and loving and accepting. Can come out and back in depending on what you're feeling. And then up you come. Maybe a flow, chair flow. Chair flow makes life a little easier on the wrists. You don't have to get all the way down to the floor. It can move the back bend up the back rather than into the lumbar. Now a little strengthening move to counter pose. So, depending on how long your limbs are, you could, if you're really tall, you could put a little height builder on the chair. I'm not so tall, so I'm gonna not use this extra height. On the edge of the chair and your feet back as far as you can get them with the heels on the ground. Legs right together. So it's Utka's chair pose. But then you come up off the chair just as much as you can. Still feel your legs touching the chair, but no weight. So this is clearly about strength, right? And you stay here as long as you can. So if this is already too hard, put some height on the chair, sit a little higher, and then you won't have to work as hard. Still feeling the chair, but not using it. One more moment. And then up you come. One more move with the chair, and then we're going to chill. If you step one foot on the chair, and you've got some supports here. All 10 toes pointing towards the chair. And then you're going to come down inside that leg. You could be here. So it's sort of like Happy Baby, sort of. And I want you to tie a weight, tie an imaginary sandbag or an actual sandbag to that bent leg sit bone. How far down you can go is how far down you can go. I can go pretty far down. I've also got these to help you. And then you can see that sit bone of the bent leg. Pull it under. Hug it towards the midline, so hug it towards your standing leg and towards your face. Lift your belly and let the buttock flesh flow with the legs. And if you have any sense of your tail, feel that move with your breath. Ideally, this is strong, it's turned on. And by this, I mean your straight leg, your down leg, your standing leg. And then in the in-between business, you could simply come to stand, you could flow, you could do the chair pose from earlier. I vote length through the middle. So easy to make it a back bend, easy for me. Some of you, it's easy to make it a forward bend, but what about right down the middle? Much harder for everyone, I think. Other leg. So you can have it sort of off to the side, just make sure you don't tip your chair over. Slowly, slowly, this sit bone scoops under and hugs to the midline. Right, so you sort of pull it in. It's bonderific. However low. However low. Send the inhale into your kidneys and send the exhales out that standing leg, maybe both legs. Inhale to puff up the dome of the back. Exhales to lift the dome from underneath and root down through your leg limbs. This thigh very strong. Standing leg thigh very strong. And then as you're ready, find your way out. One more forward bend, and then we're going to do a supported back bend before we rest. The forward bend could be a dog of this sort, right? It could simply be Uttanasana. But if you want, climb up on your chair. If you face that away, it puts a little bit of lift under the toes, sort of like that blanket from earlier. Not quite so bad. And then, you know, depending on where you're at, you could thread the belt under the chair, sort of pull yourself down. So those of you who are sort of caught here, add that opposite where you try to get some length. So again, this isn't bad per se, but if you do it all the time, it's going to muck you up. So you want to keep some effort to change where most of the tug is. If you're rounding here, most of the tug is here. If you go forward, then you'll get more tug here. So you have to balance it out. Those of you who are real flexy, you can go even a little bit deeper maybe. But super lifted through the front of the legs, the kneecaps, the low belly, even the tail. And I'm sort of pushing the chair away with the feet. I'm cutting the outer feet into it, and I'm hugging my belly back to fold me in more, squeezing legs towards each other. You decide how long you want to stay. Breathe, really breathe. And then when you feel complete, you climb out, lose the chair. I recommend for this last bit, if you've got a belt, make a hip width loop and put it over your feet. Put it over your feet, right at the arch of the feet. I'm going to keep mine there all the way through Shavasana, right? Start supine, full body stretch. And it doesn't even have to feel stretchy, just full body reach, I should like to say, full body reach. And then again, not a back bend. See if you can find the through line from the very top of the head through where the belt is at the soles of the feet. Add a little heel pump and some deep breaths. Relax your arms. Okay, so then from here, you could just stop and be done, actually. That's inviting. I want to open up the hips a little bit more, though. So, with the outer feet captured by the belt, I'm going to put a block between my knees. So then you'll know if the belt's too wide or not wide enough. It should be a natural outer foot heavy with knees squeezing the block without the feet being wider or narrower than the knees. Second block within reach. And then first stage, as I teach bridge, is to try to put that block on a shelf in front of you. So that action all by itself, sending the knees forward, and that turns on the hamstrings, and feel how it pulls your hips off the floor. All right, so that's hamstrings on. And then if you try to push your mat away, that's thighs turned on. And then put the block on the shelf, and then push the mat away. And so it's toggling, hamstrings, thighs, hamstrings, thighs. And you need both, you need both. And if you can get up high enough, maybe you need tiptoes. Second block, maybe on its tallest side, or second side something, right? Something to support you. And then the play is between keeping the belt taut, outer feet cutting the belt down, and squeezing the block between your knees so it doesn't drop. So now it's like that rotation. Chill with the arms. If you need some support, you could curl your knuckles under and open the chest. I'm a fan these days of palms flat, making the thumb side of the arm heavier. So thumb of the hand and the armpit sort of dropping down, and super straight elbows. Of course, again, the block could be lower if you need it to be. but I feel a lot of integrity in the inner leg and some extra lengthening in the outer leg. Slow and deepen the breath. All the toes are lightly on the floor. You don't have to do the big toe twang. In fact, if you can make the big toe as heavy as the outer feet, it's going to add a little something, something for you to check in with. So from here, stay as long as you like, and then remove the props and rest, or lose the props now, and you can take one or both legs up. Belly should be soft, so if your hamstrings don't let you hold your legs straight up without hardening the belly and rounding the back, then come out and find another way to invert, like legs up the wall. Ideally, belly is really soft. There's a clear back bend here, but the hips are still in flexion. And I invite you to be fascinated by your feet. There's 26 bones in each foot. Then you only have 2 lower leg bones, you only have 1 upper leg bone. That's where the magic is. That's where the transformation can be guided from. So many more options with the feet that feed options into the legs. So I invite everyone to be fascinated with their feet. There's a reason why they're revered in our tradition of yoga. And even old school Christianity, they used to wash feet, public washing of feet in church and stuff. So beautiful, so relevant. They're how we connect with the earth, mostly. Feel free to do one leg at a time, whether this leg stays bent or you straighten it. And by this leg, I mean the down leg. And if you straighten it, now that inner foot should stay heavy. Big toe relates to pubic bone. Big toe diving down. It's hard for me to straighten my leg here. And we did not do much lengthening of the front of the hips. So just allow what's there. Don't be pushy. No one likes a pushy person. And so your body won't like you if you're pushy. I mean, it'll love you regardless, but it'll love you regardless. Even when we're jerks to it, it loves us. Switching legs at your leisure. So for my down leg, as I attempt to straighten it, I'm giving myself a little manual assist. I'll show you on this side, where I'm catching the outer hip, the outer pelvic half of the down leg, and I'm actually inviting it to turn in. And that makes it a lot easier for me to get my leg straighter. And here we are again earlier in the sequence, like how much can that up leg remain up on its own? Here's where that comes in handy. If your back starts to talk to you, for sure come out. There's other ways to work this kind of stuff without pissing your back off. When it's time to come out, both feet on the floor, pluck the block out, and stick your butt out behind you as you come down. I don't vote rolling down unless you really want to. And then when you land, knees together, feet wide. Check with your breath, any squiggling around that feels helpful. We have a handful of supports at our leisure. So you could take your blanket, put it behind your knees. I personally do not like to rest with my legs turned out for long periods of time. So I'm going to put the belt around my feet again. This will hold my legs in neutral rotation. And in fact, I'm going to add a little bit of turning the thigh flesh internally. So as you grab each thigh, you pull the outer thigh out to the side and the inner thigh down to the floor. Make sure you're comfy. You want to be like the princess and the pea, so any mild discomfort addressed right away. And I want you guys to rest. Take your rest. And I'll offer a few things before I leave you until tomorrow. Whatever's touching the floor with weight. So like backs of the heels, for me, backs of the knees, because I've brought the floor up to meet them. My two SI joints, and I want to feel even on those, so adjust your buttock flesh as you need to. The backs of my forearms, my shoulder blades, my thoracic spine, my ribs, and back of my head. All the things touching the floor with weight. Let those parts drop further, further, further into the floor forever. Exhales help. And the parts of you that touch the floor that don't have a lot of weight, just check in with those. And maybe it's their natural relaxed state. If that's the case, great. But if you find that you're holding somehow, if you're holding yourself up away from the floor, if you need to hold there, keep doing it. If you need it, keep it. As my beloved Amy Matthews would say. But if you don't need it, can you let it go? And then it's about letting go and letting go and letting go. So letting go of all the parts, let the body be held by the intrinsic support of your present mind and the intrinsic support of gravity and earth. That's huge. Just let that hold you. Just fall into that. Fall into the intrinsic support of being here now. And as you breathe, even letting go of the breath, let the breath breathe you. But each inhale expands you a little bit, and so you move, parts of you move more into space. You take up more space. And so feel into the intrinsic support of space to open the mind, to soften the temples, to relax the skin. And to simply be with what is. There's no other choice, right? We have to be with it in order to interact with it. So right now, just now, cultivating the capacity to be here. Stay as long as you like. Thank you for tuning in. I love you. Be well. See you tomorrow, I hope. Namaste.